Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Martin, Business Development Manager at Carlisle College. Thank you so much for joining our Project Next Gen event this afternoon, all about the 7 key skills that you'll need within an apprenticeship or future employment. So I'm joined today by Cumbria Future Leaders, who are kindly supporting the event, and a gentleman called Andrew Bernard, Bernie for short, who I'm sure will introduce himself and take you through his presentation that he has for us today. So just to kick us off, I'm just going to tell you a brief snippet about Project Next Gen and what it is and what it's about. I'll then hand over to Cumbria Future Leaders, and then we'll get into the event content. So why get involved in Project Next Gen? So if you haven't attended one of our events before, Project Next Gen is all about equipping you with the skills that you'll need to help secure an apprenticeship and be successful in the workplace. So we're hoping that by the end of this session and by the end of future sessions and using the content that we've uploaded online, you'll feel really kind of empowered to go out there and actually secure yourself an apprenticeship for this year. We also want to showcase local opportunities to you and really get advice and guidance from some of our employers across the region as to the best ways that you can get into an apprenticeship. And in terms of what's in it for you, provided that you come along to 2 or more of our events, you'll actually get a certificate from Carlisle College. That certificate is something that we would encourage you to sort of go along to interviews with and actually present the fact that you've been involved in a really high profile careers and employability programme. It's something that could really help you to secure a job. So in terms of how you get that certificate, it's really easy. As I say, just attend 2 or more of our live events and complete the survey at the end. So I will put the survey into the message box so everyone's got a link to it, but the survey can be found there. And really what we're asking is every time you come to our event, you fill in the survey, and it just allows us to track how you're actually finding the content that we're putting out there. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Nicola of Cumbria Future Leaders, just to tell you a little bit about who they are and why they're supporting us today.
Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Nicola Woolley. I'm the Secondary Programme Manager at the Centre for Leadership Performance. I oversee lots of different programmes that work with young people from year 7 all the way through to sixth form, colleges, universities and into their early careers. We are really thrilled to be supporting Project Next Gen with this event today and future events over the next few months as part of the Project Next Gen programme. Cumbria Future Leaders has been set up as a brokerage and development programme and interactive website to support young people as they transition sort of from their late education into further education, higher education and early careers. So it's 16 to 25-year-olds. We have a website that you can go on and see all the different opportunities. It brings together different youth organisations, educators, employers and young professional networks to give you a real understanding of the breadth of opportunities available to young people in Cumbria. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Bernie, who is here to deliver the content for today. Thank you very much, Bernie.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. My name is, well, as it's been said, Andrew Bernard is my official name, but everyone calls me Bernie because I don't like being called Andrew. Now, this happened in school when all my mates were called stuff like Joey, Tony, Porky, Hursty and Buzz. They started calling me Bernie, so I really liked it. And then when I got a job, I went for an interview and this guy said, "Hello, my name's Dave Smith." And I said, "Hello, Dave Smith, my name's..." And I mumbled my name. And it took the guy 5 times, Dave Smith, it took 5 times for him to get my name. And on the way, I didn't get the job. And on the way home, I'm just driving home and I'm thinking, what an idiot. What a muppet that bloke was. He didn't get my name at all. And then something kind of hit me that I realized that it was my fault because I was mumbling it and then my head went down and I kind of closed in on myself. So I thought, you know what? It stopped me feeling very confident. I like being called Bernie. You know what? I'm going to call myself Bernie. By that time I was 21, 22, and I just thought, I'm an adult. I'm going to call myself what I like. So I'm going to talk to you today about some of the other skills that you're going to need in your future. Confidence is the first one. So my first tip for you is to call yourself something you're happy with. You are going to have to introduce yourself hundreds of times to people on Zoom, in face-to-face, in meetings, in interviews. Make sure it's something that you're comfortable saying, because if you have to repeat it, the more times you have to repeat it, the more embarrassing it gets. You'll know this feeling because you've done it before. So first tip for the top, call yourself something you're happy with, introduce yourself with confidence. So my book is called The Ladder, and it's born of 15 years of working with young people across all disciplines and all ages. So we've worked with everyone from a 4-year-old actually up to an 82-year-old blind lady, but obviously she's not a young person. But we've done most of our delivery in secondaries and FE colleges. So it's all about learning about what makes us tick, learning about how to present ourselves, and also the ladder is actually for educators so that they can help you guys to understand your skills. Because I don't know about you, but when I was at school and when my daughters have been at school, they felt the pressure to fulfill the academic requirements. And whilst they did other things alongside, so they might have done sport, they might have done art or dance. Both my daughters did horse riding. They did all sorts of other things, but the skills that they learned in those are not really seen as that important, or they're not really measured or captured. So my book is about learning how to capture those, because you have got so many skills that are not necessarily measured. We measure your academic performance with exams, with projects, with, you know, practicals, all the kind of things that you're having to do now, and all the things you've done to get your GCSEs that have opened the door to where you are now. This qualification is going to open the next door, but actually we're entering a time that's quite difficult. So I've written the ladder so that educators, teachers, lecturers can help you. They haven't already yet. So I'm giving you a direct insight into the 7 skills that are going to be really important in your future. Now, that's me. Can you guess which one's me? Yeah, it's the one with the mullet. That's me there, giving the wave I gave to everyone at that point. And it didn't mean peace in those days. It meant something quite a lot ruder. Now, I went to a grammar school. My parents moved to get me in, and I did all right up to a GCSE O level. I got 10. And then when it came to A levels, my mates all went to college. So I went home one day and said, Mum, Dad, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to go to college because they'll treat me like an adult. I can go and wear my own clothes, so I don't have to wear the uniform. And I'd kept this one to myself. There'll be girls there. And I just thought, you know, it's good because I'm ready. I'm ready for a change. And they said, well, we're not ready for that. You're going to have to stay at college, at school. You're going to have to stay at the grammar school because we moved to get you in. So you're going to have to stay. So I went, ha, watch me. So I got obsessed with the wrong things. I was taking 3 A levels. I ended up doing 2 because I got thrown off 1. I was suspended for going on holiday with my girlfriend to Benidorm of all places. And I got 3 weeks off on suspension for doing that. I also got into the 4 Fs. So I was into football, got into going to watch Arsenal. If there's any Arsenal fans, I imagine there's not. Get out now while you still can. Secondly, fashion. I had to wear the right clothes. Now, because I only had a job that paid me £8 a week, I ended up nicking clothes, and I got arrested for it. And there were 6 of us nicking stuff in London, and we got arrested. And I basically had to stop stealing anything. If I got caught stealing anything in the next 2 years, I would have gone to prison. I had to pay a fine, and I also had to take the stuff back to the shops, which was really embarrassing. The 3rd F was fighting. I got into football fighting and got arrested for that as well. So I did some crime, but I was absolutely rubbish at it. Oh, and also my dad was an ex-policeman, so home life was, well, horrible. At school, my parents were also splitting up. I was sharing a room with my dad, so that was really weird. School, all the stuff that I was doing that was really bad was in the local papers with the name of the school next to it, so they didn't want me there. And so I was getting into trouble, and I was creating this kind of toxic bubble all around me. And the last thing I was really into was girlfriends. And so I became like obsessed with just the wrong things. I was obsessed with my hair. And if you were looking at me now, I'm completely bald. So, you know, I was obsessed with it, but it's absolutely had no effect on the rest of my life, apart from a little bit of mild disappointment. So at the time where I got my A-level results, you can probably guess what's coming. I got an E. An E was my highest grade in sociology, which includes criminology. So you think I'd be better at it than that. And I got a U in business studies. Now, when I told some year 10s recently, one just sat back in his chair and went, how? I don't know. The idea was, well, you can probably make up from that photo and from this photo that I was focused on doing things that I wanted to do and not really thinking about what I should have been doing. So when it came to my A-level results, I opened the envelope and I bawled my eyes out. I cried my eyes out, and I asked for help. I asked my mum for help, and I ended up leaving the town I was in, which is called Aylesbury in Buckinghamshire, and went to North Wales because there was only 2 places that would offer me a place after that. So I then did the wrong jobs for 17 years, and then I woke up one day, and after that day at work, I realised I wasn't enjoying work after a couple of months, and then I had this realisation as I left work, and you'll feel this sometimes when the college is hot and the weather outside is cold, and those doors open up and you get that blast of cold air on your face, that really refreshing blast of cold air. I had a realization at that point, and I realized that is the best part of my day. Now, I had a good job. I was working at Lancaster Uni. I'd moved to Kirkby Lonsdale. My kids were in a nice school. We bought a little cottage, but the best part of my day was leaving work. So I thought I have to do something different. And that's when I realized I needed to be the person I was when I was young. I needed when I was younger. So I didn't have the qualifications to be a social worker, and that would have taken a really long time and a lot of money to kind of retrain. So I realized at that point what I wanted to do was work in schools and develop enterprise and business skills. I still want to do that, and that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years. So life is long. Yes, you can make mistakes, but what I'm trying to help you with now is to kind of work out that even if you make mistakes, underpinning your qualifications are the skills and personality that you've got that will make a difference to how you push yourself forward into the future. So that's been my mission, and it took a long time for me to work that out. My company's called Innovative Enterprise, and we've worked with over 165,000 young people in the last 15 years through workshops and talks and discussions like this. So that's me. That's why I talk about what I talk about. And I want you to learn from my mistakes, because I was an absolute idiot at school and then at sixth form. I didn't learn anything until I went away. When I went to college, we nearly got thrown off the course in the first year for smashing a house up after a party. The house I lived in. So you can see how stupid I was. I was clever because I got into grammar school, but I was stupid in terms of my behaviour because I was always trying to be something to somebody else rather than focusing on who I was. So you are like a beach ball. Do you know why I say that? Because there's just one of you, like there's one of me, and there's one of Martin, there's one of Nicola, there's one of you, there's one of your lecturers, there's one of your parents, there's one of your other parents. But there's lots of sides to us. And the reason I say you're like a beach ball is not because your head is full of air. It's because every side of you has a different part to it. Now, you only see through your own eyes, but there are other parts to you. So think about the way you use language. So when you're at home, you'll use particular language with your parents. You may use, and I hope you do, use different language with your grandpa, your grandma and grandpa. You use different language with your young nieces and nephews, particularly if you're babysitting. You need to be encouraging, you need to be polite, you need to use, mind your P's and Q's. You also need to think about the way that you are at school or college, the way you behave there, the way your language you use there. If you've got a part-time job, you have to use a particular way of speaking, and that's just language. Your behaviors, your body language, your clothes, the way you present yourself. So every single one of us has got different panels around us, but most of us don't ever think about all those different sides to us because we can only see ourselves through one set of eyes. That's all we think about. So I'm going to give you an example. If I was to ask you, I'm going to ask you to put this in the chat, and I'll pick it up with Martin in a little while. So I'd like you to use the chat. How many of you, just put a Y, how many of you are good at languages? Now I'm willing to bet not many of you are going to say, yes, I'm good at languages. I ask this question a lot. Now, you may have done French, you may have done Spanish, you may have done German. You've probably done, you definitely have done English because it's our native language. When I go into schools and I ask who's good at languages, regardless of where I am, if I'm right in the centre of London, right in the centre of Manchester, right in the centre of Birmingham, with a huge diversity of population, there will be maybe 2 kids that put their hands up. If I then say who speaks more than one language, virtually every hand will go up in the room. Now I'm going to say who speaks more than 2 languages. and at least half the hands are still up. Again, depending on where I am in the country, if I say who speaks 3 languages or more, there will still be half a dozen young people with their hands up. So what I'm trying to get at is that we have skills that we don't recognize, which are extremely important, but we don't recognize them because we just use them. So it might be that kids of kind of 3rd generation kids who've maybe their grandparents came over from Pakistan, so their grandparents still speak just Pakistan, and that their parents will speak English and Pakistani, and then they've learned English, Pakistani. They also maybe do Spanish and French at school, so they might speak 4 languages. It's just what they do. But actually looking at your skills from the outside, that makes you really employable, because it means you could work for people like tour operators, travel companies, people who translate websites. You could also do writing for various different types of speeches. You could work for Médecins Sans Frontières, global charities. You could also work for people like the British Council. So you could be a diplomat. So there are tons and tons and tons of skills that you've got that we don't recognize. So that's what this session is all about. It's first of all about looking at where they come from. We're talking a little bit about careers, and we're talking a little bit about where your career can take you. This is you in the middle. You're obviously not grey. Some of you will have nicer, longer hair. Some of you won't have a head shape like that, but just bear with me. That's you in the middle. You are surrounded by, you're at the middle of this context. So you've got parents, or you've got guardians. You've got people that you live with who look after you. They will have influences on you. If they've got good jobs, if they've got steady jobs, if they've got a professional job or a manual job, if they have long-term unemployment, they will all have an influence on your attitude to work. You'll also have friends. So your peers, some of them will be really diligent. They'll be, what we used to call nerds or SWATs. There'll also be some of your friends that think it's cool not to be good at stuff. So you'll have various different influences on there. You'll have education. Some of you will have A stars at GCSE. Some of you will have scraped through with C's, or whatever they are now, 3s or 4s. I was all right at GCSE, but the wheels fell off at A level for me. And you'll also have part-time employers, and you are surrounded by employers. Some of you will be on apprenticeships where you'll actually be part of an employment, part of a company. So you sit in the middle of all this, and there are lots of influences on you in various different directions. Sometimes it's bewildering. There's too much choice. Sometimes you'll have a very clear idea about what you want to do. Sometimes you'll have no idea. I'm going to implore you to start focusing on what skills you've got, as well as what role you want to undertake. And there's a really good reason for that, because all of us, whether we know it or not, like the languages thing I just explained, we don't know what we've got or what we haven't got until it's kind of pointed out or compared to us. So every single one of us has different opportunities. Some of you will have been fixed on a job since you were 7. Stereotypes in Work and Careers start at the age of 7. A brilliant project called Draw in the Future, where 20-odd thousand primary pupils drew what they thought various jobs looked like. Stereotypes of gender, of firefighters are men, dentists are women, vets are women, nurses are women, doctors are men. So those kind of stereotypes that I'm sure your college is fighting against, and everyone who teaches you is trying to talk about the fact that you don't have to think about these stereotypes. Some of you will have these, and it's not your fault. So those stereotypes, unless there's input to try and change that, there's very little change between the age of 7 and 17 unless there's very much intervention. So the fact that you're part of this program, you're learning about your career, you're learning about your future, it's really important because it opens your eyes to things you don't know about. And you don't know what you don't know until you know it. So all the time we're learning. Work experience is assisted by connections in industry and business. So if you don't have maybe family who've worked consistently for a period of time, if you don't have extended family members who can help you to get into work experience, imagine if you're supposed to organise your own work experience, but you don't have family connections. Where do you start? If your mum's a lawyer and she knows that she can get you into a place of work, brilliant, and you want to do law, great. Say you want to be a joiner, and your parents are professionals, they don't know where to start. So that's why work experience is really difficult. It's a difficult thing to get hold of. So that's where educational support comes in, and it can change that inequality of opportunity. BAME students, black and minority ethnic students in universities on average are 15.6% less likely to get a first or 2-1 with the same entry grade. So if a black person and a white person goes into university with 3 A's, the black or minority ethnic person is 15.6% less likely to get a first or a 2-1 degree. Just the way it is. There's discrimination at all levels of university. So some people have inequality of opportunity all over the place. We're aiming with the college to try and change that. That's what my book's about. It's about trying to change that and make it better. Independent schools, if you're lucky enough to have gone to a private school, they're going to push students towards university entry, or things like commissioned officers in the army or the armed forces. So you go in as a captain. They're not going to really be that interested in apprenticeships because they're going to think, oh, well, our clients aren't going to want that. So again, inequality works both ways. Theresa May, the previous Prime Minister, said in her great meritocracy speech as she stood on the steps of number 10, selective schools increase inequality further because housing costs have gone up so much. My parents scraped by to get into the house so that I could go to the grammar school. Getting that extra money broke the family because it meant they were really, really unhappy. So the family broke up. That's happening massively now across the country. Places like down Surrey and places like that, house prices are obscenely expensive. It's like £4 a month to rent a house. So selective schools are only favouring people who are rich. So there's no great meritocracy in the UK. In fact, inequality is growing, and it's growing right now because there are other external factors that are going to be affecting you and your jobs. So bear with me while I take you down a slightly distressing route. Not distressing, a bit depressing, but I'm going to give you the tools that will help you to overcome it. So there's lots of stuff going on at the moment. Obviously, we've got COVID. Now, under 35s account for almost 80% of the jobs that have been lost in the past year. So this was an article that came out in March this year. So over the 12 months of the pandemic, 80% of jobs that have become unemployed, or the jobs that have stopped, have been lost to young people. So people between the ages of 18 and 30. So that 18 and 35. So that means there's less jobs for guys like you when you come out of college. So you're going to need to up the ante. If you're doing an apprenticeship, you're in with a good shout because you're developing a skill and you're working with a company. If you're not, you might have to work at things in a slightly different way. Also, Brexit is having a massive impact. We're not hearing about it because there's so much going on about COVID. In the first month of this year, as we were actually out of the European Union, it recorded a record fall in trade with the EU in the first month. That's continued. It's not quite as bad now, but it's still a fall month on month. That will have a knock-on effect on jobs, and those jobs are generally going to be jobs for young people. If graduates, so people who are doing degrees, doing internships, you can still, they've not been made absolutely illegal, but unpaid internships. So you can go and spend 3 or 6 months at a company and they don't pay you. In fact, you pay for it because you have to pay for transport and lunches and that kind of stuff to get there. Again, there's another inequality. If you can't afford to do that, if you can't afford that free work experience, then that's another bit of inequality. It costs, if you're doing one in Manchester, it can cost you £800 to do that, to do an internship. So some young people get trapped in those. So again, that's another thing to be looking out for when you become a graduate. And the other changes post-COVID, I mean, we're all doing this now, we're doing this virtually. Generally, I would be in your college talking to you live in front of in a lecture theatre, but I'm doing it virtually because we've had to change things. You will have heard of Unilever. You don't know you've heard of it, but you will have heard of it. Loads of stuff in your fridge, Hellmann's mayonnaise, loads of stuff in your house, Persil washing up liquid, Dove soap, I think Tresemme shampoo, and loads of other brands that you know in your house are made by Unilever. They have said the era of full-time office workers is over. They employ 128,000 people worldwide, and they have said that people are not going back to work 5 days a week, 9 till 5. Every single one of their office-based employees will be able to do flexible working. So we're entering a new era. You're entering a new era of careers. So what I want to talk to you about is skills alongside academia. I've already mentioned it. So you're going through your skills, key stage 1, key stage 2, key stage 3, key stage 4, post 16, which is where you are now, higher education, apprenticeships, A levels, T levels, BTECs, GCSE, and you know, further education. That's where you are. But alongside this, all the way through your life, you've developed skills in loads of different areas. So it could be babysitting, it could be art stuff that you've done, it could be music, it could be that you take bikes apart in your spare time, it could be that you've had an agricultural upbringing, you know how to feed 300 cattle in an hour, you know, you might have part-time work that you're drawing skills on. Where you live, living in the Lake District, you're going to have different skills to people who have been brought up in the centre of London or the centre of Newcastle, and opportunity is going to be different regardless of where you are, but you're going to have skills that you don't yet recognize that are going to help you in your future. I'm going to ask you in a minute to do a little bit of work, guys, on the call. So I hope you've got a pen and a piece of paper, because I'm going to ask you to think. I'm doing all the talking. Martin's done all the introductions and all the organising. Nicola's done some introductions. It's time to do a little bit of thinking. I know that sounds difficult and it's kind of late in the day, but this thinking is about you, so it's only going to help you. And there are 7 skills for the future. Now, these are things that you might think are really the bleeding obvious, but very often we don't necessarily think about these because all we think that our skills are linked to our qualifications. So if I was to say to you, like I said to many young people, tell me what you're good at, I will get a range of responses that start with to I don't know, to lying back with a really big grin on your face going absolutely nothing, and everywhere in between. Very seldom people will go football or cakes. So, but what you need to start developing is an understanding of your skills, because when you're writing applications, if you're going to apply to university, if you're going for a higher apprenticeship, if you are going for other selective courses, if you're going for jobs, you've been told this 100 times, you need to fill out an application form, and on that application form you need to talk about yourself in a positive way. Just listing stuff you've done doesn't cut it anymore. We need to link that to the 7 skills for the future. The other thing about the 7 skills of the future, with all these changes to the world of work, means that some of you are going to start businesses. In the UK, there are 5.1 million small businesses. 70% of those, so that's over 4 million, don't have a single employee, which means there's a very good chance of whatever you're learning now, you're going to have to turn that into a business. So these skills will become extremely important. So that's what they are. I'm not going to read them out now because I'm going to read them out in a minute. And the thing I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to write down the word star vertically like it is on this sheet. Martin, what I'll do is I'll send you a digital copy of this so you can send it out to participants later. This is from my book. This is one of the tools on that this thing here called the cask. It's one of the tools that is there to help you at various stages in your life. So what I want you to do is write the word star down, and this is going to be really simple for you, but it's going to be a way of you learning to internalize some of the skills that you've got. So I'm going to give you an example, and then I'm going to ask you to take the next 7 skills, and I'm going to ask you to take a couple of them and think about yourself and what skills you've got. So the first one is the situation. Where were you? What was happening? What were you doing? So I'm going to give you a sporting analogy. You are a hockey player. You are the captain of your hockey team. Doesn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl, you are the captain of your mixed hockey team for the college. There might be one. I don't know, Martin, is there? Don't know. There's not one. We'll start one. So the first one, situation. You are the captain and you are in a tournament. The task was to be a captain at the tournament and make decisions, which is what captains do on the pitch. They shout, they organise, they construct people. So what happens is the actions are situation. You're in a tournament. You're in the semi-final game. You are 2-1 down in the 3rd quarter. Things are not looking great. You have just pulled a muscle in your thigh, in the back of your thigh. The task is you've got a decision to make now. You then have an action to take. What's the action you're going to take? You could keep playing if you want, or you could decide, you could kind of motion over to the coach and say, you know, do the kind of turning over hands motion. I want to come off. You could take that decision, and then you could talk to the coach about bringing a fresh player on. You do that. The results are that fresh player helps your team to score 2 more goals. You win 3-2. You go through to the final. So this is a really simple way of telling people what you are good at. Now, I call these pocket positives, because if you're going to write something about yourself and someone says, can you tell me about your leadership? There's a brilliant example of it. Can you tell me about a time when you worked well as a team? That would work in that one as well. Could you tell me a time when you had problems that you solved? You could use it in there as well. But what I want you to do is start working towards thinking about these skills about yourself, so that you've then got little stories to tell, because it doesn't just tell us that you are the captain. So here's a question, and I would like some interaction, please. Don't sit back. If that was you and you've just told that story, what does that story tell you, or tell the person that's listening to it? What does that tell them about you? So just put 1-word answers in the chat. What does that tell us about you? Right, I'm going to tell you what it means. It means you're reliable, because you don't become captain unless you turn up to every training session. It also means you have leadership qualities, because that means if you were captain and no one listened to you, or no one saw you as a leader, you wouldn't have the respect. The team respects you. Fourthly, you will make decisions. You are a decision maker and people respect you for that. You are also an active member of the team. You are not caring about your own ego and getting a medal, a winner's medal. What you are doing is making sure that your team wins and goes forward. So you're a team player. So from one tiny story, which would take no more than 2 sentences to write, the people who are reading that or listening to that as an interview answer will then know all these things about you without just listing out all the stuff that you do. The STAR model is one of your best friends. So Martin's going to share that with you after this event. So here are the first 3 skills. They're not ranked in any order, and these were created by a guy called Tony Wagner, who worked on a book called The Global Achievement Gap. And what employers told him in a series of university interviews for Harvard University in America was that these were the key skills that employers wanted, but that weren't being taught in schools or colleges. This was written in 2008. I've included it in my book because they're still not being taught. I am passionate about this because these skills will stay with you for the rest of your life, while a qualification ages and dates. So the first one, collaboration and leading by influence. When have you done that? When have you been a leader? And when have you been part of a team player? You have to be both. You can't just be a leader and not part of a team. If you're a leader who's not part of the team, you're just someone that shouts at somebody, you're a manager, or you're a dictator. A leader leads within the team. It doesn't just push people forward. So a leader's at the front pulling people forwards. And the Centre for Leadership Performance is all about this. Cumbria Future Leaders is all about this. So you have to be part of these things. This is an important question. Very often you will be asked questions like this in jobs, in college courses, in university courses. Tell me about when you showed leadership. When did you work as a team? How do you work as a team? Do you like being part of a team? What are your skills within it? So that's important to think about. Second one, agility and adaptability. I'm just going to subtext that as coping with change. As I said before, we've done a lot of that in the last 12 months. Those of you that did your A-levels last year, hellish time. Those of you that are going to be doing A-levels, qualifications, apprenticeships coming up, you've had a lot of massive changes. My daughter's been at university. She hasn't been at university. She's been either at a university house or here. She's in her final year. She's really found it tough. She's really found it tough because you go to university and college for the social side. And so many of us have just been staring at a computer screen. It's not what we're built for. So we've had to cope with change. We've had to change the way we do things. We've had to maybe change routines because we're not going out of the house. We need to think about our mental health. We need to think about, we'll watch some of this. We'll go and take the dog for a walk. Some of you have probably been cleaning the house without being asked 10 times because you just want to do something different. So we all have to cope with change. That's a really important thing in going into companies, going into organizations, going into universities. Coping with change is massive. It's a massive constant, and that's going to keep changing. Curiosity and imagination. Think about what you're looking at now. You're either looking at a mobile phone or an iPad or a computer. The size of the machine you're looking at 20 years ago was 3 times the size. 50 years ago, it was the size of a building. Now you can put it in your back pocket. Why did that happen? How did that happen? People look at things and go, why did that happen? A chemist called Edward Benedictus was in a lab. He broke a glass flask. This is in 1850. It fell on the floor, and instead of it shattering into 1,000 pieces, it cracked, but it held together. And instead of going, oh, that's weird, and putting it in the bin, he looked at it and thought, why has it done that? And it turns out they were working with this product called cellulose, which had coated the inside of the glass vase, and it had basically created safety glass. It smashed, but it held it together, which is why windscreens don't kill people anymore, because they used to be made of real glass, which would shatter and then slice people's heads off. Bit grim, but they did. Now they don't. It goes into small squares of glass, holds it together, and then it can be peeled apart. So curiosity and imagination is really important, and asking why, how's it done that, what can I learn from this, is one of your greatest strengths. Rather than just saying, oh, that's how we do it around here, we need to question things and say, we could do this better, we could do this differently, how can we improve this? So they're the first 3. I'm going to ask you to just write down those 3 elements. So I'm going to ask you to write down leadership and teamwork as 1. I'm going to ask you to write down coping with change. And I'm going to ask you to write down how and why, because they are 3 of the main elements of the 7 skills for the future. And these are the things that employers, further college and university courses, and apprenticeships are going to be looking for. To be honest, some of them might not be looking for it, but if you give them this as part of your application, you are going to stand out head and shoulders above everybody else, because it shows that you're aware of the skills that the organization is going to need, and that all organizations are going to need in the future. We're all going to need to be flexible. We're all going to need people that are asking questions to improve, and we're all going to need leaders, whether it's self-leadership or whether it's leading other people. We're all going to be able to do that, because companies need to be able to trust their employees to work from home. That is leadership. You need to be able to self-regulate and manage your own time and your own ability. Moving on, I'm going to give you the last 4 now, and then I'm going to leave the chat open for some questions, and hopefully some of you are going to give me some questions, because these are important things. They're important things to you. They're important things for Martin and the college. They're important things for employers. So next one. Write it and say it. Good written and oral communication. Some of you might be brilliant at speaking. Some of you might be brilliant at chatting, talking, gossiping. How can you make that into a positive? I'm a very active communicator. The other thing is, you need to be able to write things properly and clearly. So some people say take 1,000 words to say a very short thing. And some people use 2 or 3 words to say everything. How organizations do that is they work with boundaries. So they'll think about what's the strap line we're going to use. So if I said every little helps, you know that I'm talking about Tesco's. If I say just do it, you know what I'm talking about. You know that I'm talking about Nike. So the essence of that brand is distilled down. You can be the same. So focus on what's important. Sometimes having an essay, like an essay or an assignment deadline of say 2,000 or 5,000 words, it's really difficult to get your information into that, which is why you have to learn how to communicate really well. Also, I've got an hour to talk today. I know I could talk for 2 hours, but I've distilled it to make sure that I get all the message across that I need to in a really simple way. So I've given you the background. I'm now giving you the content, then I'm going to give you a chance to look at it. So good oral and written communication are vital, because when you're working, if you're working virtually like this, you need to be able to get your message across either in writing or be able to speak, and also be able to use a camera confidently. So there's lots of things about modern communications which are evolving all the time. I've seen your TikToks. I know you can use Snapchat, so I know you're very comfortable with using screens, but in a professional context, you need to use it in a different way. And that's where good oral and written communication comes in really strongly. So every single one of us has at our fingertips a device which will find us 43,000 responses to a question within half a second. Don't we? We've all got Google, we've all got whatever the other equivalents are. We've got Safari on our Apple products. We've got a device that will search out information. You can get the answer to that question. So this is accessing and analyzing information. Accessing it is no problem for us anymore. But is it legit? Analyzing it is really important. Who's written that piece? Who wants us to think that? Where are the actual facts in all of this? So today in Westminster, we've got an inquiry where Dominic Cummings, who used to work for the Prime Minister, is telling all the secrets. Do we trust it? We didn't trust him before. We don't trust the Prime Minister. Who's telling the truth? Who's least believable? Who's most believable? So these are the questions you need to ask. So it's great to get the information, but firstly, what are those things of facts, and is it a legitimate source? So because different newspapers, different publications will want you to think in different ways. You only have to look at the Brexit referendum to say that. My daughter's just written a geography dissertation on the language that was used in Brexit, particularly around fishing and taking back control of our waters. And we know how that's going. So it's very important to look at where the information is coming from as well as the information itself. But you're bright people, you're already doing that. Next thing, critical thinking and problem solving. Is this as good as it can be? Could it be better? If so, how? If you're doing a practical course, you will be giving problems. You will be giving problems about electricity, about business, about plumbing, about all of the other things that you're dealing with. How can we make it better? About computing, about programming. How can we make it better? Do we just do the bare minimum and take the money and run? Or do we do a job that in future is going to make sure those clients come back to us? So, and how can we make it better? So critical thinking and problem solving is a brilliant tool. It's a particularly brilliant tool in teams, because you need to be the person who's doing that says, actually, guys, I know we've got this idea and we've worked on this, but I think there's a better one. Bear with me, hear me out. Let me just talk to you about this. So you're almost the person that is brave enough to say the unsayable, and just because in the bigger picture, you want to make a better solution. The final one of the 7 skills for the future that is really important is initiative and entrepreneurialism, on our entrepreneurship. And this is where initiative is, there's a problem there. I don't like that problem. It really irritates me that headphones keep getting wrapped up, headphone cables, or that my bike keeps getting stolen, or that my shoes fall apart. How could I make it better? Or that women keep getting attacked. How can we change this? So we need to change this. So we need a campaign. We need a campaign. We need an invention. So if women are getting attacked, it's not women's fault. Who's attacking them? Let's deal with who's attacking the women. So let's start a campaign against becoming aware of male violence and how we can deal with that. These problems with my headphones, I can't afford earpods. How am I going to deal with this? I need a device that I can wrap them up so that they don't, so that I don't look at them and they suddenly turn into like a mad spider's web of cables. How can we deal with this? So this is where initiative and entrepreneurship come together. What's the problem? How can I solve it? And like I said before, 5.1 million small businesses in this country have less than 49 employees, and most of them have one. So there's a very good chance, in the light of the stuff that I've told you about the way the economy is changing, that you're going to have to start your own businesses, some of you, because there might not be jobs for you. So what can you do? What initiative have you got? What ideas have you got? Whose problems can you solve? Because if you've got that problem, other people will have the same problem. And again, I'd like you to think about the stars. So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes. I want you to use that bit of paper. So good oral written communication, accessing and analysing information, critical thinking and problem solving, initiative and entrepreneurship. So starting your own business to solve problems. And what I would ideally like you to do is think about yourself. Let's face it, teenagers, we do that all the time. But I would like you to think about yourself in a fairly kind of positive and objective and a slightly critical way, and think, right, what skills have I got in each one of those areas? So where have I been good at written and oral communication? So you may have given a presentation, you might have done some drama, you might have stood on stage and accepted an award or given a speech. Accessing and analysing information. Did I do well in that maths or that graphics homework? What information did I take in? What did I do on that fake news assignment? How have I solved problems and used the STAR? What was the situation? What was the task? What did I do? And what was the result? And I'd like you to do one of those for every one of those 7 skills, because this is the start. I don't want you to stop there, but I want you to do is, when you're doing something, maybe you're doing top bins, you're kind of kicking the ball into the top net, or you're kicking it off the bar, or you're doing something that's arty or crafty, or you're doing some doodling, you're doing a brilliant photo of an eye, you're doing amazing makeup. Think, actually, I'm good at that. I'm going to put this down as one of my stars. So you're building up a little bank of positive affirmations about your skills, so that when you come to write an application, you've got a bank of positive stuff about you. Because when you're writing applications, you can ask for help, but most of us don't. And when you're in an interview, your mum, your tutor, your dad, your part-time employer, your nan are not going to be sat there going, oh, tell them about that. You have to do it yourself. And in order to do that, you need to have done the homework on yourself so that you understand what those things are. So that is the end. That is what I wanted you to get across. They are the 7 skills for the future. And the things that I wanted you to get across was identifying them. You've all got them. You just don't realize it yet. Develop them. So things that you're doing on your course, the practical skills on your course, the stuff you're learning in part-time jobs, even things like babysitting, they're really important, because people are trusting you with their most precious things, their kids. They're then giving you money at the end of the night, as long as you give them their kids back in a reasonably good state. So think about that. You know, there's loads of trust involved in that. There's loads of respect involved in that. And also, how do you evidence the skills that you've got? Every single one of you has got every single one of those skills. I just want you to start digging down and working out what they are and learning how to get them across to other people when you're asked to.
We have had a few questions come in throughout. These have been coming in as you've been speaking, so you may have answered some of them already, but I think it'd be good to recap if that's okay.
More than happy to, yeah.
I'm also conscious you haven't been on the screen yet, so I'm going to just actually pop you on just to answer some of these questions for me, if you don't mind, Bernie.
Should I get rid of my screen?
No, it's fine. I've got you on there. That's okay. Wonderful. So one of the first questions that actually came in was, I want to be an apprentice in construction.
Okay.
Are 7 key skills the same for every job?
Well, these are the skills that have been assessed as what employers are going to be looking for as the flexible way that we can kind of cope with change, and kind of these are the skills for the future. Basically, these are the 21st century skills, which Tony Wagner came up, and they've been adopted by the OECD, which is basically the global economic guidelines, if you like. So yes, if you think about it, think about a career in construction, you need good leadership. So if you don't have good leadership, you get shoddy workmanship, you get terrible construction, and you get danger. So you need to be a good leader, or you need to show certainly self-leadership to start with. Agility and adaptability. Sometimes the weather's going to be so bad you're not going to be able to work. Sometimes you're going to hit a problem. You're going to hit a pipe in the ground that you can't work around. So you're going to have to be agile, and you're going to have to go to the architect or go to the plant designer and say, we're going to have to do something different because this is a real problem. We can't get through this. Curiosity and imagination. You need to work out ways of doing things better. Good oral and written communication. One of the ways you identify and communicate on site is by wearing the appropriate PPE. So bright yellow jerseys. If you're working in construction on the railways, you have to wear bright orange. So that's one of the ways you say, I am ready for work, I am safe. So all of these things are vital, and you can adapt them to whatever kind of role and industry you work in. Think about web design. All of this stuff's important. If you're a web designer and you're creating the graphics for it, someone else needs to code behind it. If a client says, oh, we want this, and then when you've done it, they go, well, no, I don't like that, you need to change. So all of these are key skills, which is why I love them so much, because they underpin so much of every skill, so much of every kind of every kind of job and every kind of role within all sorts of careers. So I hope that's useful, and it allows you to be flexible between that. You can say, well, I learned this when I was on a construction site for an apprentice construction. Then I decided I'd go into, I don't know, architecture, or then I decided I'd go into health and safety. So I've used all these skills, I've built on them, and now I'm using them here. So yes, they apply across the board.
Perfect, thank you. Another question, how would you demonstrate these skills with not a lot of work experience, or with little work experience? They've said, where do you start? Okay,
start with you. Start with you. And as I showed you before, can you see me now on the screen?
I can see you, yeah.
Okay. So when I showed you this design earlier with the kind of routes through work, this is called the CASK, the Continuum for the Acquisition of Skills and Knowledge, don't you know? But this is basically where we get the stuff that we know about. So along the top edge, you've got arts. So did you do any arts or drama when you were young? Were you in scouts or brownies or guides? Did you do drama or music? Do you play a musical instrument? Do you do sports? Have you been part of a team? What hobbies have you got? Do you go fishing? Do you, are you an artist? Do you do drawing in your spare time? Do you build go-karts? Do you do stock car racing? What part-time work have you got? Where do you live, and what skills has that given you? And what opportunities have you had in the past that you've taken, or maybe wished that you had? So all of those things will bring you skills that you can evidence. So it doesn't have to be work. That's the whole point of it. I want you to think more broadly. So part-time jobs, so work experience. So like I said before, babysitting, sports, everything you've ever done will have given you a skill. So that's what I want you to think about. I went on a summer camp. I did summer camp in Camp America when I was at my college course. And what I realized at that point is that I worked really well with young people. I should have come back, and instead of doing business studies, I should have gone, actually, I'm going to go back to improve my A levels, then I'm going to become a teacher. But I didn't, because I just wanted to finish my business studies course. But I went on that experience, and it gave me loads of things about trust, responsibility, safeguarding, caring for young people. So there are loads of things that you will have done. Every single one of you will have done loads of different things. So just start drawing them out. Use these skills, and use the STAR model to draw out the skills you've got from all these different places. The thing I really want you to get across to you is that you've learned skills at college and school. You've learned loads and loads and loads of other skills outside of college and school, and they are equally valuable when we're talking about skills. Yes, the qualifications gets you the key to unlock the door, but actually the skills and stuff that you've got and how you put those across are the things that actually turn the key to allow you to go through to the next stage. So they work together, which is what I'm so passionate about. I hope that answers that question. I ramble on a bit, but I hope they're good enough answers.
I think it definitely does. Just one final question here, and I'm going to potentially reword it slightly. It talks about the question is there are there some skills that are more important than others? But I think where this question came from is maybe your conversation about the changing climate, the changing job market, how we've all had to move into sort of more of a digital world. So I guess there's some of these skills maybe coming more to the forefront than they once were. Yeah,
and I think that these things will change through life, through your own life, but also through the life, through the calendars. Through the calendar life. So we've had a year of lockdown, we've had a year of horrendous stuff going on, we've had a year of terrible mismanagement in the kind of global sense, but also what we've also had is amazing incidences of skills, of community coming back together. So I work with a youth club, the Phoenix Youth Club over in Cleator Moor, and they did some really nice kind of well-being packs for local neighbours. So loads of things that we've developed over the last year. Some of those will take forward. Going into the future, we're going to need to be more flexible because, as I said about the unemployment rate for young people, I also said about, Brexit is going to have a long-term impact on the economy, and we're not hearing about it again because because COVID is taking over everything. It's masking all the other problems that we've got at the moment. So that's going to have a big impact on the availability and the types of jobs that we're going to necessarily have in the UK. So these things will wax and wane, but what I really don't want you to do is think, oh, I only need to worry about adaptability, agility and adaptability. What I'd love you to do every month is to kind of do, you know, maybe the first day of the month is to think, okay, have I developed any of these skills this month? And just write a little note to yourself, start a kind of, you know, like a skills diary, if you like, and just a reflective blog that says, actually, I've done that. Oh God, I did that presentation. I've never done a presentation before. I did a presentation on Zoom in front of 100 people. Brilliant. So that's loads and loads of things. And our skills and their demand for them will develop across time, and the need for them and the need for us to evidence them and talk about them will develop over time. So I think it's really important that you create almost a kind of book of your own, a book of yourself. So you've got something to reflect back on. So the CV is one thing. It's quite a dry document that has a list of stuff that you've done, but that gets better with the cover letter that you put towards it and any application forms you have to fill in by using your skill diary. So you can then fill that in with examples of stuff that you've done and really good kind of high quality, chunky examples of how well you meet the brief for the companies, the organisations, the apprenticeships, the university course you're going to go to.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
So I suppose the long and the short of it is, you've got skills. It's on you to record them, because you're not going to have your mum, your gran, you know, people nudging you, your lecturers, your tutors, your favourite teacher. They're not going to be there. You're going to be on your own. So you need to be your own cheerleader.
Yeah,
I'm going to leave it with that. That's the thing I want to take away. You are your own cheerleader. And these are the things that you're going to need to talk about, as well as other stuff. But this just gives you a framework to look around.
Fantastic. Thanks, Bernie. And one final question. I'm going to go ahead and answer this one, if you don't mind, only that it's related directly to apprenticeships, but it does touch on a lot of what you've just been talking about. And the question that came into the chat there was, how do I go about securing an apprenticeship for this year? So it's a question that we get an awful lot, and it's sort of the purpose of this event, really, in that one of the key and most important things to do is to try and develop yourself as an individual and develop these skills that's actually going to you know, put you in really good stead in what is a very competitive job market. One of the other things that I would be recommending that you do right now is to start to talk to as many employers as you possibly can. Really, you know, go out there and sell yourself, identify those opportunities, knock on those doors, have those conversations, demonstrate the skills that Bernie's been talking about, and hopefully come September you'll have identified an opportunity for an apprenticeship that can be fulfilled via Carlisle College. One of the other options and one of the alternatives, well, I probably wouldn't call it an alternative, more as in addition, you can apply to our apprenticeship talent pool at the college. What that means is if there are any vacancies that are available and match your skills and match the application that you put forward, your interest, your career ambitions, we can then put you forward for that particular vacancy and make a recommendation that the employer might like to interview you for that apprenticeship. So please do go ahead and do that. You can do that via our website on the apprenticeships page. So that's at carlisle.ac.uk. You just click on apprenticeships, but I would also recommend, and we say this to every budding apprentice, do have a backup plan for September, because as sort of Bernie identified a little earlier, you know, the job market is quite tough at the moment, and we do have more applicants than we do jobs. So what I would recommend you do is also apply to a full-time course with us, so you've got a backup plan, and also that backup plan, if you want to call it that, is helping you to develop the skills, the knowledge, the behaviours, the experience that you'd actually need to be successful within an apprenticeship. And we can transfer you from a full-time course onto an apprenticeship during the programme. So you aren't stuck. We can still get you into industry. But again, you've got that plan for September, you know what you're doing, and you're developing all of the skills that Bernie's identified today and talked us through. So thank you very much everyone for attending. This is the third of our live events now. We do host them monthly, so please take a look on our social media page for the announcement for our next event, which will be our June event. Please also go on our website and social media pages to look at the different resources that we're putting together for Project Next Gen. So we've got video content from employers right across the region, giving tips, skills, guidance, their own personal stories, their own personal journeys. How did they get to where they are? So hopefully that will sort of, again, start to equip you with what employers might be looking for, and also sort of highlight what industries and what occupations you might like to get into. So thank you so much for attending. We'll leave it there, and yeah, we'll speak to you soon. Thank you.